Afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Pedersen. So let me just some background information on me and why the heck I'm here. My dissertation over a decade ago was on the school calendars. Now, if you read my dissertation, if you're really bored or want to go to sleep, you could read my dissertation and you'll find out that there was no significant difference between traditional calendars and year-round calendars. But here's the difference. In that time, if you can notice, California and Texas, of course, two of the largest states, largest influx, they were using multi-track calendars. And I'm sure everyone knows what multi-track calendars are. If not, I will explain it right now. Multi-track means that at any given time, there's a portion of students, it could be 25% to 30%, that are out, so that the school is constantly going on. In some cases, those teachers were teaching maybe even 200, 220 days, if not more, and there was burnout. So it was actually it was not successful. But when in California and Texas, they had such a large influx, they couldn't keep up with buildings. So if anything, as we talk about year-round or balanced calendars or modified calendars, the only model that I would say does not work and only use in case of emergency would be the multi-track calendars. I think we would all be, I don't know if you guys knew that already, but the research out there is it doesn't work very well. So sometimes people get confused and they say that's lumped into the calendar reform. In a way, I guess it is, but it really is not a true indicator, nor is it the real spirit of what year-round or balanced calendars are. So after that, I did an article from the history on the history of summer and vacation that I'm going to kind of just further talk about in my next book that's coming out. So that was great to look into why and how summer came about. And we won't talk about it here. It's not really the purpose of it, but it is interesting because some of the vestiges of why we do the things we do is really, and this is America in general, is just based on tradition, not necessarily because it's the best thing to do. The book was based, you would think it's based on my dissertation, but it's not. Actually, only a small portion was. It really just looked at what was happening and some suggestions on how to implement year-round schools. The next book, actually, I'm working on with John Mishra from Washington and David Hornak, and we're going to be looking at more of the practice and taking us, it's the sequel to the book, so it's going to be taking it to the next level. But in addition, looking at some strategies and highlighting your state, the best state, Washington. I want to see if I could just get, just make sure I say that so that everyone sees all the good work around the country that's happening here. Looking ahead, and my work with Washington has been for the last about 2 years. David brought me on, had read my book and thought it was great and wanted to do a book study. And here I am. So almost 2 years, maybe 2.5 years later, I'm working, and been out there a couple of times. Love the state, loved your wine, and love meeting all the great people out there. Looking ahead, I see a lot of reform, and what I want to do for tonight is that I'm going to go into some current studies. I have most of them are peer reviewed, not all of them. A couple of them, I think, one's from USA News. Then I have dissertations, and then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to get on our imaginary plane or imaginary RV. I think we have enough people, and we're going to go around the entire country and look at what they're doing. All right, let's jump ahead. So I went from most recent to I think I did the last 3 years. So looking at 2023, here is the National Council for State Legislators 4-day school week review. And of course, I won't read everything, and you're going to have all of the. I either did citations, or I actually have the actual links. But 24 states have at least one school district using a 4-day school week. That's an increase of over 600% since 1999. And 850 of the nation's school districts use a 4-day school week. That's up from 650. So you could see there's a lot happening with calendar reform across the country. A lot of it, of course, due to the impact of COVID and people re-examining what time is. Here's a longitudinal trial of sustained content literacy from first to second graders, and its effects on student reading comprehension. And pretty much you go through, and this is for grade 1 and grade 2, And the study shows that highlights the benefits of sustained learning of related topics and science content across grades. And I said this to the previous group before. Everybody, it's pretty common knowledge that we always had things during the summer to make sure we ameliorated learning loss. There's a thing called faucet theory that is that we don't mention in here. I'm going to mention now because it's not recent, but the work of Entwistle et al. Talks about faucet theory. Pretty much when the faucet's on, water comes on. When we're teaching kids, they're learning. When we're not, they're not learning. Now, that's an oversimplification. I'm sure you could say maybe some wealthy students, students from affluent areas, they are able to go visit museums and do all those things. But as you'll see, it's not really fair, and all it does is really increase those achievement gaps and those wealth gaps across student populations, especially our most fragile, which could be students from minority students, or students who have, or English language learners, or students who have learning disabilities, or students from low socioeconomic areas who don't have access to all of those things. And what it does is it just makes those gaps larger and larger. And this here we have the next work. This is from USA Today, and this is from a principal up in Buffalo, New York, a superintendent, sorry, up in Buffalo, New York, who said, in many ways, it seems that though the rationale boils down to we've always done it this way, despite the fact that our education schools are serving more students, families, and communities well beyond the typical boundaries of the traditional school day and year. I mean, all of us are educators. Who actually starts and ends when the bell rings and the bell ends? And if anything, we know that it goes on and on and on. And so it's much more than just what it was years ago. Back to school, this is from Q Research, and this is just really to look at when schools start. And here it says, I highlighted the certain sections, and it says state laws play a part. And of course, 16 states establish windows by statute or by rule. When you're looking at this, it is state rule, but when we see later on, almost every state is doing something. Here is what the Pew Research put out. As you see here, you have a lot of students here starting as early as August 7th. Some of them August 28th, not too many in July. Remember, when we're talking about a balanced calendar, and sometimes they say year round, the misnomer is that summer is destroyed. There is no summer. In some schools, it could be 10 weeks of summer, right? Depending on what the calendar falls. What advocates suggest is this: if you could go anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks of summer vacation, that's golden. So it's not true that you're trying to eliminate the entire summer. You're only looking to take it and kind of just mitigate the amount of time that kids are out of school. So once again, shrinking it from that from 9 to 10 weeks down to 5 to 7, that's really optimal. That's what we're looking to do. And I think when you look at it, you could re-examine those days so that those calendars can be actually more effective and more impactful. All right, moving along. This is the last one for 2023 that I have. This is from Ontario. But it said that students lose numeracy skills during the summer months. Once again, this is anyone who's been in education longer than 2 years realizes this. For many kids during the summer, their skills drop. And then in September, we spend usually in September, the first month, sometimes even more, going back to review what we need to do to get them back up to shape. How am I doing, everybody? Too fast or too slow? Just good? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Good. All right. Moving to 2022. More schools should offer year-round school option. And this is an author who wrote a book after COVID. Remember, these are only 2 to 3 years old, From Reopen to Reinvent. And he says that all the way from Charleston to Michigan, the year-round schools, and he says, will create happier teachers. We all want happier teachers, and that it helps rejuvenate them, re-examining those times, having breaks, maybe adding a Friday or a Monday little break, a 4-day. We all know how those 3-day weekends are fantastic. And the only thing better than a 3-day weekend is what, everybody? A 4-day weekend, right? So putting those along, we're getting into October now, right? And we're in the midst of it. Couldn't we all benefit from a 3 or 4 day weekend right now? I think everyone would agree. Here's another piece of statistics that I thought was interesting that says that the teenagers have been working, that fewer teenagers have been working now than ever before. Roughly 20% of teenagers worked prior to the pandemic compared to 40% in 1990. I don't know if you all agree with that or not, but I've seen that as well. Teenagers work less. Somehow their parents are still giving them money, but they're working less than ever before. So some of those issues of, well, what's going to happen if teenagers have to work? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. National Library of Medicine talked about, they looked at traditional calendars and year-round or balanced calendars and said definitely a combination for, it doesn't seem to have any differences for students who are wealthy and affluent, but definitely for the lower socioeconomic, that they could benefit from some kind of balanced calendar approach. Summer program student math. This is a meta-analysis, 37 studies from K to 12. And the results showed that children who participated in summer programs that included mathematics experienced significantly better math achievement than their counterparts. Well, I think we would all say that's why we have summer programs, because we know the impact of them. Here's another one for the effects of summer holidays. Now, this is interesting. The research here, this was in the UK, but found that inequalities in mental health based on summer holidays. That's because depending on, once again, the wealth gap, if you're wealthy and you have a summer, you can have an enriched summer vacation. If you're not wealthy, you may not be doing much of anything. Moving to 2021. African-American students and scholars make reading gains during a relevant summer camp. Literacy focus on this was for a study for grades 3 to 5. And lastly, for our research here, school closures from Ontario. A meta-analysis was done for over 12,000 students, and it's found learning losses of 3.5 and 6.5 months, almost achievement gaps of 1.5 due to COVID and due to summer learning losses. And they said that it recommends summer learning programs to address and ameliorate these. Moving on to our dissertations, only one major one in 2023 that I found that was pertinent for us. The best practices, this is from the Delphi study, and the findings showed that 4 best practices for improving summer reading for rural, low socioeconomic status included using summer reading. No surprise, right? 2022. 4-day school week is a pathway for principal attraction. So in this one, results were analyzed from the different schools, and it showed that those with 5-day work weeks had higher agreement that they felt anxious. So more or less, the ones who they had a 4-day school week and a 5-day school week, the ones who had the 5-day school week were more anxious. The ones at the 4-day school week were less anxious. In New Mexico, 4-day and 5-day, the results showed here. This was interesting. They did the academic. There's a lot of stuff about morale and attitude and feelings about the 4-day and 5-day school week. This one has actual academic achievement, and what it did was it looked at students from a 5-day school week and a 4-day, and what they said was there was no statistical difference between the two groups of students. Therefore, the 4-day week kids did just as well as the 5-day week kids. And this is a qualitative study for the perceptions of special education. And the results show that the 4-day model was perceived by special educators as more positive. And that helps out, once again, for those populations that we talk about, the fragile populations. Rounding out, how am I doing, Jen?
You are at 24.38 minutes.
That I have left, or?
That you have left.
Okay, good. So I'm rounding out these now in 2021. This one is how Missouri school schedules affect teacher morale. We talked about this is a major thing. The results show that teachers from the year-round schedules increase employee morale and retention. This is interesting. So now you've heard the studies from 4-day as well as year-round and these calendars, and that the teachers feel better. You'll hear, some of you may have heard David speak before, where he's talked to his teachers and talked about how his teachers, what they've said to him. Once you get into it, and there's been a couple of districts in Washington as well that have spoken out, you get a little hesitant at first, but once you start getting those additional breaks, and you're looking at 180 days, maybe just spread out differently. That's it, just differently, that you actually have more breaks, but it's just not long breaks. Last dissertation from 2021, it's a Tennessee K-12 school district, said that the satisfaction levels increased, and this is for school climate and the implementation of year-round schools after it was implemented. All right, moving on. Let's jump in the RV, everybody. And we'll look at we're going to go around the entire country, and I want you to get a feel, because, you know, in Washington, I'm sure sometimes you think like, all right, we're doing it, but who the heck else is doing any of these things? As you'll see, when you walk away from our presentation today, you'll see that every state is doing something. Let's kick it off with Alabama. So they have an actual bill that's going to add more days for public school. Remember, when we're looking at balanced calendars and year-round education, yes, there's a possibility you could add days. Yes, you could do intersessions as those added days, or you could keep the same number of days and just redistribute them. And then also to expand school calendars for charter schools. And also the lawmakers were involved in the year-round calendar. In Alaska, they've implemented a year-round nutrition program. And I know Washington did something similar. And this was to benefit the charters, so that this way, charter schools, that they could serve kids year-round. In Arizona, the Liberty Elementary School District transitioned to a 4-day school week. You have more districts with a different calendar starting early in Arizona, and Valley School District went to 4-day. Moving over to Arkansas, here we have another school district spends money in expanding their school year. Another one for 4-day for an Arkansas school district. And one article talks about how the 4-day school week principal called it transformational. I did not put any articles here from California because they have a bunch of schools. They're a large state, but they have one of the most comprehensive guides on year-round education and things. And if you want to check it out, it's right there in that website. So they have a lot of resources there. Going to Colorado, I shared with the other group, depending on where you are in Colorado, they already have like an extended 3-week winter break because of certain high altitude districts. In some cases, you can't even go anywhere during certain parts of December. Also, 4-day school weeks are on the rise there as well. Connecticut, New London launches a year-round school option for kindergarten and first grade. That's an interesting way to also implement it as well. Think about this. When you're looking at the money and the bang for your buck, if you're going to place anything, getting it in the lower grades so the kids can actually start the right way and before there's any major learning gaps occur. I think that's a great idea. And also they were rethinking the calendar itself and starting earlier, ending later, and extending the breaks. Delaware, they've implemented more summer programs than anything else than I heard of real calendar reform, but they have amped up their summer programs. In Florida, they have switched to 4-day school week, and Hillsborough is one of the districts that was considering it. Georgia, here is one case where a 6-year-old was pleading for 4-day school week, and another article talks about how Georgia was doing the 4-day school week to counter burnout as well as attract teachers. You'll notice that the 4-day school week thing, not that I'm necessarily a fan of it, but there's a lot of advantages in rural areas. I've seen some where they've added an hour each day, and usually Monday through Thursday, and Friday they're off. I've also seen some that have made Friday more of a virtual day, but the ones who are looking to save money, if they're off on Friday, and they have longer days, there's less fuel that's used, there's busing, those kind of things. But it's really a lot of those. I've not seen many 4-day school weeks in metropolitan areas, a lot of rural areas, but a lot of them are doing it to reduce teacher retention and attract teachers, because there are more places that are starting to do that. Here we have Hawaii. It says 90% of the schools in one of the largest districts have switched to year-round schedules. Moving to Idaho, we have 4-day school weeks, and here there's one. They say that the year-round schedule isn't popular, but yet people have adopted it. Illinois, they operate on, this is their public law that allows for that, as well as what to do to feed kids during the summer when they are looking for those summer programs. In Indiana, you have one Lafayette school district, and another one reports that more than 300 schools classify themselves as year-round or balanced calendar. Remember, everybody, these articles are only 2 years old or younger. Iowa, they're finishing out their first year with 4-day school weeks, and here is, we talked about attracting educators to rural Iowa with the 4-day school week. Kansas, moving to Kansas, 4-day school week, and they're doing that to combat staff shortages. In Kentucky, they turned to all-year operation, and one was as early as fall of 1971. They've had that. In Louisiana, they have the St. Helena Parish doing the 4-day school week, as well as trying to do a mid-August start for one of the Rapides parish school district. In Maine, they have the 4-day school. In Maryland, they have what they call the innovative school schedules, which allows for credit to be accrued in the evening, weekend, or summers. Massachusetts, they have something called the Massachusetts Expanded Learning Time, which once again allows for summer learning. Michigan, where David Hornak is from, they have a pretty comprehensive balanced calendar review, and this is a really good website that they have. That's from the Department of Education on how to adopt and implement balanced calendars in your district. This is the law from Minnesota that talks about year-round and what to do for modifying their calendars. Mississippi, they actually had a grant to if you're going to implement modified school calendars. In Missouri, 4-day, also changing and shifting their calendar to benefit their kids. Montana, 4-day. There's 2 examples of that. Nebraska, 4-day. Nevada, year-round schools. The students have 4 different tracks. Here's one that says the parents support the 4-day school week. New Hampshire, they've incentivized schools to switch to a modified calendar. In New Jersey, they have that's where I'm from. Special education students are year-round, depending on their IEPs, but there's also a variety of summer programs, intersessions, as well as working with those students who have special needs. Here's a public school district in Las Cruces in public schools that have switched to a year-round calendar. New York, this was the former chancellor who wanted longer school days. North Carolina, they have defied the state law and started earlier than they were supposed to. North Dakota, they're making a longer year as an option for some of the school districts. In Ohio, 4-day school week. The teachers scream, "We're burnt out." Oklahoma approves the 4-day school week for its rural districts. Oregon, 4-day weeks for some students. Pennsylvania, okays the modified year-round calendar. Philadelphia to do some summer programs. Let's see. Rhode Island, they have the year-round enrichment program. We're coming to a close for our states, everybody. South Carolina, modified year-round calendar. South Dakota has a program for K through 12 that helps out for year-round. Tennessee is exploring year-round. Texas, 4-day. Utah, 4-day. Vermont, they have something called the seamless summer option, which allows the kids to eat during the summer. Washington did something very similar, and this also keeps those summer programs in place. 4-day school week in Virginia, West Virginia, 4-day school week. Year round for Wisconsin, they have interim session classes. Lastly, for Wyoming, they have the 4-day school week. Not lastly, I saved the best for last. And in Washington, right, the beautiful state of Washington, a lot of progress that has been done, right? You have Winlock, Oakville, South Kitsap. This is what, of course, when the Senate considers proposal for the school year, we know about that. Adding school days. 45 districts, probably as many of you here, had the grant. Mount Vernon for the modifying the school year. We talked about Highland, Mount Adams, Toppenish. And Winlock already. We got Freeman and the Union Gap. So some of the critics, when they talk about this, they say there's no evidence that year-round balanced calendars improve academic achievement, but there's no evidence that longer summers improve academic achievement either. There's no study ever. At least there's studies about summer learning loss. There's no study that says kids have to have 10 weeks off. The other studies fail to replicate. Well, it's really hard. It depends on what you're doing. You know, whether you're looking at increasing math scores and why are you doing this? Math scores, teacher retention. There's a variety of different things of why you need to do it. So if you're trying to replicate a study, make sure it's done. I haven't seen any studies replicated, but that does not mean that there's not validity to what's going on. There are a lot of studies that have been replicated. Childcare is always and busing, always these financial things are always going to be issues, but having many people at the table, having some creative discussions, maybe having the high school students work with being helping out with early childhood, being like teachers' aides as part of their stuff during the summer can assist. There are no savings to implementing a calendar. It depends what you're looking to do. If you're looking to do a balanced calendar to save money, the only thing that would work would maybe be a 4-day, maybe, but it's not going to save you money. But you want to see, and it shouldn't cost you that much. If you're going to add days, it's going to cost. But if you're going to redistribute the days, it should be no major costs. If you're going to add intersessions, there's going to be some costs. All right, I did all that. How much more time do I have, Jen?
You have 11 minutes and 37 seconds.
So I breezed through everything in there. And I do see something in the chat. I don't know if that's a question for me or that's for the
that was just me.
Yep, no, that's all right. So I know that I talked about a bunch of different things. I'd like to get all of your feedback if I could, just represented from everybody. Keith, do you mind if I pick on you first? Just thoughts, just general impressions, whatever.
For me, it's you talked a lot about the 4-day work week. And we're here for the balanced calendar. Can you combine them both and have a 4-day work week in a balanced calendar setting?
Sure. Why don't you can look at, if you want to keep your days 180 days, you just start adding. So not every week's 4-day, but maybe you just add the number of 4-day work weeks that you have. So yeah, so there is, and that's exactly how it's done. You just take those 180 days and you chip away of that long summer break. So by default, you are going to have more 4-day school weeks. Not every school week will be 4 days, but you'll just have more of those.
Okay, and then what would your first step be to introduce this to a community? And we're a small rural community. We might end up having 30 people come.
Yeah, here's the step that I would do first. Of course, you have to have conversations. My first step would be to figure out when everybody takes off and see if there are any trends in the data. I don't know, maybe there's some kind of town festivals that you have that everybody seems to be off the day before, day after. And start there and looking at those things. Maybe it's spring break. You know how spring break's tricky. It's never timed the right way. So there's always kids out the week before and the week after because it's not timed the right way. Look at those trends in data and say, listen, everybody, for a lot of kids, they're already doing 4-day school weeks, or they're already doing a modified calendar. It's just, we call them absent. So thanks. Keith. Thanks. Yep, right, Keith. Angela, comments, questions, just general impressions?
This last year, we looked at the data from a balanced calendar, and we moved our conferences from being 4 half days to 2 full days.
Okay.
And part of that was in the effort for food insecurities. So in 9 Mile Falls, we have about 1,380 students, 190 employees. Small rural district, we already know that in order to move the dial and maybe move this direction, that we have to get our stakeholders on board. And so, reaching out to our parent engagement committee, bringing parents to the table is going to be imperative in order to maybe be able to make this move. We do know that we have an absence problem ever since COVID. I don't have a sub problem. I have an absence problem.
So look at that data, and maybe if it's the, I don't know, here I'm making up now. Please don't go away saying this, but if it's the Monday after Super Bowl, maybe we all need to take Monday Super Bowl. All of a sudden, I see a bunch of people smiling now. But maybe, why fight it if you're only educating 3/4 of the students anyway? Maybe that is a step. I don't know if that's the best example, Angela, but I figured I would just give that because that could at least begin conversation. Thank you so much, Angela. Kevin, thoughts, general impressions?
It just looks like there's a lot of different states and people thinking about how to recover from learning loss.
Well, that's the great
in different ways.
That's the great thing about our country, right? We have, for every single person that we have in our country, we probably have 15 times as many opinions, as well as ways to do things. And that's what's also important too, is when you're looking at those calendars, it has to really fit. Even in Washington, there's diversity, right? Rural communities, more affluent communities, not so affluent. So you really got to fit the needs. And as Angela said, as well as Keith, you got to fit the needs of what you're doing. And if you get that, then you're going to get that buy-in. Thanks, Kevin. Tim?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I heard a lot of retention and attraction data, and I'm curious, really looking at that because, West Valley tries to take all of our teachers, but we still compete with them and they usually choose us. But we're really looking to be the front runner of, what does the data say? We don't want, I think there's going to be teachers we gain. There's going to be teachers we lose. Do we know what the net of that is?
Yeah, it's brand new, right? So we're looking at stuff that's only 2 to 3 years old when you're looking at like this kind of like calendar being an incentive. But I will tell you this, I could give you some empirical stuff. So I'm a superintendent in my day job, and never before, only in the last 2 years have teachers, young teachers, not that you have to, it matters, but young to the profession, ask me as one of the questions, at the end where you go, so have any questions for me? They asked me, what's the work-life balance here? I've never heard that in almost 30 years of my career. So people are, Tim, looking for that work-life balance. And maybe that you have to think, are you one of those places that does that? If so, then you're going to attract those kinds of people. But there's a lot of dissertations and a lot of work on at least the satisfaction level, as I said. It's pretty obvious. I would say it's pretty obvious that almost to every single study that the 4-day or a balanced approach, as far as the teachers feel, is better.
Thank you.
There's still other challenges and other things like that, but just for teacher morale. But there's as we all know, morale is great, but that's only one facet of that. And any of the just kind of get one representative of the West Valley who has not stolen a teacher from Tim's district, if they want to just share something or a question or their impressions or whatever. Hopefully I'm okay. Hopefully it's a friendly rivalry.
Very friendly. No, thanks for training them up, Tim. We'll take them anytime. So we're part of a group. There's 10 of us in this room, 2 board members, classified staff, certified staff. We have a student. We have 2 principals. 2 of our union leads, one on the PSC side, one on the cert side, assistant soup, principal. And so I guess just from the generalization of, yes, there was a lot of research on 4-day work weeks. there's been a lot of conversation in our state about, reshuffling the 180 days. What does that look like around some of those breaks that you may have high level of attendance or less attendance as far as like Thanksgiving break. There's a school district that neighbors us that takes a February break built into their calendar. They have a school that's operating pretty much as a balanced calendar school within their district. So just, continuing to look at what are options that are out there. What are some of the calendars that look a little different? Just moving those 180 days around. The 4515, was also shared in the previous presentation for the first breakout. So just exploring what options are out there, and always appreciate our neighbors in Central Valley.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also there was a nice discussion that was had with some of the local schools on the reservations and the reservation and leaders to talk about the tribal leaders, to talk about some of that where you could have some high absentee rates for certain cultural events that are occurring. And actually that's a great way to get buy-in when you're saying, hey, we're trying to figure out what days we could actually work around some of the existing holidays or celebrations that you have. And it's a good way to find people to buy in. And also, depending on the size of the community, that could be a great thing for community building as well. But I think some of the things is trying to figure out where the monsters are, or all the spooky ghosts, or whatever things that haunt your community. Like, what are they afraid of? I'm in Jersey, so one of the things that they're constantly afraid of is the workforce at the Jersey Shore. You're going to take all the teenagers. Well, here's a suggestion. You could, maybe it's not mandatory for every single high school student. Maybe you focus on more of the elementary, early childhood, and middle school. Maybe the high school students can do more of an option of they can do stuff for pre-AP or dual credit or college readiness or remediation, or they could, work and turn it into a portfolio project where instead of just working at McDonald's or wherever, they could turn it into a project. They could still work there, but they could turn it into understanding a project where they have to understand how their restaurant is marketed, what happens with the finances, what happens with, how employment, some of the laws that have to be adhered to. And now you've turned this into a real learning opportunity for those kids. And you think about it, and I said this before in my last example, with no disrespect to any math teachers. My father was a former math teacher, but we have to do something where we have young people who are graduating our high schools and can solve quadratic equations, but don't understand compounded interest.
James,
Yep.
Well, I have a question. I'm just curious. Are you aware of any regions, not districts, but regions that maybe have looked at the community needs, looked at the pathway needs of students, and done any kind of co-op to coordinate their balanced calendar schedules, so that we have some families that it works better for full year and some families that it works better for partial year, and that there is some kind of shared agreement in that?
Yeah.
I think we put the walls of our districts up all the time, and we don't always think outside of that.
Yeah, and I think the perfect place to do that would be intercessions, so that this way maybe you can do some shared services with neighboring districts. Also, that decreases the number of teachers that are needed, so that this way you can accommodate. And maybe instead of maybe that's just one option. Maybe it's intercessions and doing everything. Maybe you phase it in where it's not 100% for everybody else. Maybe the intercessions are more in the areas of the arts and humanities, which is severely missing from our schools. But definitely the looking to explore that. You're talking some real advanced stuff, because you know how our country is. Every district is kind of like, it's just us. So it would take some districts that are already cooperating to do that, and maybe looking at that shared services, or looking at the municipalities. In many places, you already have arrangements with the local municipalities. Maybe they're doing some summer programs as well. And we all know it, and those are all separate budgets. And sometimes that's another thing, because they're afraid to lose that local control. Thank you all. I see that we're being pushed out. Jen, thank you so much
Yes.
for helping
Thank
me
you.
out. Yes.
Yep, I'm going to stop recording now. Thanks, everyone.